Next aspect that we will be dealing with is the bones or the skeletal system of the upper limb. So we'll be dealing with the bones in the upper limb, and the first bone that we will deal with is the clavicle. And the clavicle is also called the collarbone. Okay, so anatomically, there's a way to describe certain bones. This includes the introduction to that bone, the general view of what the bone is, the location of the bone. Since anatomy deals with the morphology, so you talk about the shape of the bone, the parts, different parts of the bone. Talk about the surfaces of the bone, whether it has superior surface or inferior surface. After you described those general anatomy and description, then you move to the clinical correlates. The first bone we'll be dealing with is the clavicle. It is generally called collarbone because that is where the collar rests on. So that's the reason why it is called the collarbone. We move to the location. So the location of this bone is anteriorly and superiorly. So you can say it is anterior superior to the thorax. You talk about the shape of the bone. Talk about the shape of the bone. The clavicle is S-shaped. Okay, so the clavicle is S-shaped. Now, in anatomy, if a bone is cylindrical, that means that bone will have an upper end, a lower end, or a lateral end and a medial end, then the middle shaft. The clavicle is going to have two parts, and that is the medial part, that is the part that is closest to the midpoint of the body, medial part, and the lateral part. Okay, so for the medial part is closely related to the sternum, so they can call it sternal end, whereas the lateral part is related to the acromion of the scapula. So here is the scapula, here is the scapular spine, and it ends at the acromion. So the clavicle and the acromion articulate in this region. This part is also called acromial end. This part is called acromial end of the clavicle, right? So we have dealt with the two ends of the clavicle, and then it has a middle shaft. Looking at the clavicle, the anterior two-thirds of the bone, yes, from this point to this point, okay, is convex, while the other curvature is concave. Okay, so the anteriorly, this part is the two-thirds is convex, while the lateral one-third is concave. Okay, that means it depresses inwardly. Then we'll move to the surfaces. Now, the superior surface of the clavicle can be palpated through its entire length. However, the inferior surface cannot be palpated because of the structures that are covering that place. So here is the clavicle. You see that the superior surface is smooth all through its length. However, the inferior surface is rough and has lots of depressions and other structures. Okay, the reason why the inferior surface of the clavicle is rough is because it admits a muscle in its inferior surface. So we have dealt with the surface. The superior surface is smooth, the inferior surface is rough. That's two ends, the sternal end, the acromial end. Now for the end, the sternal end is quadrangular in shape. And move it. Okay, here is it. The sternal end is quadrangular in shape, whereas the acromial end is flattened. Okay, so if we want to know if a clavicle given to you, if it is the right side or the left side, then you will locate the sternal end, which is quadrangular or thicker, and the acromial end, which is flatter. Okay, so that means the clavicle starts from the midpoint, which is the sternal end, and then moves laterally. So if the acromial end for this clavicle was the left side, then that means it is the left clavicle. And if it's to the right side, it is the right clavicle. All right. And the clinical correlate for this bone is fracture. Okay. The clavicle is an exposed bone that can be affected by fracture. And the fracture can occur between the junction of the curvature, between the junction of the two-third convex curvature and the one-third concave curvature. So around this region, that is the weakest point of the bone. And that also gives an explanation of its ossification centers, where the clavicle bone will not fuse until a person reaches a certain age. So it is that last point of fusion that shows the weakest point of the bone. And if there is a fracture, it mostly occurs at that point. So that's it with the clavicle.